tonight. I want to tell you a story about a family that I worked with, in particular, a young woman that I worked with who was absolutely really stuck. And let me just see if I can break this down, if I can paint the picture of what was going on with this young woman and her family, because it was actually her parents who reached out to me first. They were very concerned about her. They had told me that she had dropped her classes and basically dropped everything she was doing to move in with this guy who was 7 years older than her. And very quickly, they started to realize that this was not a good dude. This was not a good guy for her. And he got her into smoking weed every day, into binge drinking, and they would even do this like party time with whippets, which is not that common, but it does happen, and I do see it with the younger crowd. And if you don't know what that is, it's those little canisters that they put in like the professional whipped cream containers, but sometimes they just use regular whipped cream, and it's all the nitrous oxide, the laughing gas that they use. Yes, unregulated. It's there for anyone to buy, but they can get their dose of laughing gas. It's pretty dangerous because you can't regulate it like they do in the dentist office. They can. And there's all kinds of burns and things that can happen too because it's compressed air. And anyway, they were into that, and she had really gotten pretty deep into that behavior and that substance use. And her and this guy, as time went on, started having more arguments and not getting along. And eventually, she realized that he was seeing another woman, and she broke it off and moved back home. But that's where the parents were really concerned because she was basically not functioning. She was sleeping half the day, on the phone half the day, not doing anything. And when she would do something, it was to get out of the house, to go with her friends, to smoke weed, drink, and look for men. And then she'd come back home and be right back to the same thing. And it was very concerning for the parents because she had no job, no plans, and nothing was moving forward. And so they're heartbroken. And then they're also telling me that they think she's smoking weed every day, that they know she's taking alcohol from the house. And when they checked their credit card, they actually saw that she had tried to buy some more packets of those whippets, those little canisters. So all that is very concerning, right? All that behavior is not healthy and it's not good, and it needed to change. But I want to make a point that a lot of people miss in that moment, and it's really I don't believe any young adult wants to be in that situation. I don't think they want to be in a place where they don't have direction, they're hopeless, they're addicted, and they're numbing out. Right? There's something more going on, because that's not what she set out to be. This is the thing that happens after a lot of bad choices, a lot of bad habits, and honestly, a lot of unresolved internal pain. And so when I had the opportunity to talk with this girl, my focus wasn't on getting her to change her behavior first. It was about understanding what was going on inside of her. Because that's what happens in a lot of families, right? In situations like this, there's so much conflict, there's so much pain and wounds and anger and emotion that they're not able to have real conversations about what's going on, right? They can't get there, and that's what I felt was going on with this family. That they were not able to talk. They did not understand what was happening. So when I was able to talk with this young woman, I started asking her questions like, when did things start feeling out of control for her? Or when, or why even did she get attached to this guy, especially when he started treating her poorly and she was getting into all this self destructive behavior? And for this young woman, it came down to pain, right? She had a lot of insecurity, and she shared how she wasn't able to talk with her parents about it, how she wasn't even convinced that her parents cared about her. And so she wasn't able to talk. Now, This girl, she was attractive, right? That's how she looked to me, but I don't think she saw herself that way, right? She told me about how it started early, like these comments that her dad would make, and how they were pretty hurtful. Like he would make these statements of, there was one time she was getting ready for a school dance and she had a low cut dress, and her dad said, "Your chest isn't big enough to wear a dress like that." Or a particular time, she was talking about she had her boyfriend over in high school, and they were getting ready to go out, and the dad started making fun of her because she was wearing so much makeup, and there was just like all these little comments that would happen about her body and her looks. And sometimes it felt like her dad was joking with her, but it always left her hurt. And then she had a younger brother who would just join in. He felt free to, say all kinds of inappropriate comments about her body and her looks. And her mom was in the mix too, because her mom, she'd go crying to her mom about how she felt and how hurt she was, but her mom would always cover. She'd always cover for the dad, and basically tell her that she needed to take or stop taking things so seriously. And so this pattern went on, and it really had an impact on how she saw herself. So you can imagine when she met this older guy and he told her she was beautiful. I mean, that was amazing, right? I mean, she clung on to that. She finally felt wanted, valued, seen, and she was basically going to do anything and everything to keep those words coming, even if it meant giving up her plans, her dreams, even her self respect, right? So, um, but now she didn't have him anymore, right? And she had no direction, no purpose, no sense of identity. Um, she was stuck, So what does she do? She's depressed, she's hopeless, she feels like she's ruined everything, and she's actively trying to avoid, right? She's trying to avoid every painful emotion about her situation. um, that's why she was on her phone all night. She was getting drunk and high and going out, anything to not feel that negative feeling, and hopefully to find someone else who would validate her, who would make her feel beautiful instead of feeling beautiful herself, being able to respect herself. So right there, that's the conflict. And that's something I really want to point out, right? That there's the conflict with what was happening in this family. The parents were focused on her behavior, right? She needed to stop using. She needed to be productive. She needed to take care of herself. She needed to participate in the family. All of those things are true, right? But she had a different need, right? She needed to avoid feeling. She needed to avoid her shame. And she did not want to face what was going on. And all she could think about is, if I could get someone, another man to love me, everything's going to be okay. Right. So they had a conflict in the way they were approaching this, what they needed. And I see that kind of thing in families so much, right? There's a conflict in how we proceed. And so what that looks like is arguments, shut down, hurt feelings, moments that everyone wish didn't happen and wish they could start over again. And that is what was happening with his family. So what we did is we worked on changing the goal, right? The goal was not first to uh, create a change in her behavior. It was about understanding, right? They needed to connect. They needed to talk about why uh, why they're doing what they're doing, and even about the past, why things happened the way they did, right? And so she was able to open up and talk about her pain and her struggle, and her father was able to see that she didn't need correction, she needed affection, that she desperately wanted to feel loved and connection, especially from her father. um, but uh, yeah, he needed to hear that. And then on the other side, she needed to hear about his past. And that was something he was able to open up about, that he was not good at showing affection, right? His way of trying to connect was with sarcasm and trying to be funny and making fun of her and making all those comments. And as counterproductive and odd as that sounds, that's what he experienced growing up, right? So he didn't know how to share feelings. He didn't know how to connect, and he certainly didn't know how to deal with those softer emotions to be able to reach out and say, "I love you. I think you're beautiful. You're wonderful." No, he took a different approach, and so it doesn't make it right. Right? None of their behaviors. We're not justifying it, but when we can connect, when a family can start talking about what's going on, you know, to give you another example, try not to get too far off course. I was just having another conversation with a family, and uh, the parents really struggled to set boundaries. They were great at saying what they wanted, but as far as like making it a very clear boundary and then having some sort of follow through when their young adult didn't follow through, they were horrible at that. I mean, they caved every single time. They'd even go beyond caving. They would bail him out and stuff like that. So we needed to have a conversation about why it was so hard with boundaries. And what we found out with that family is the parents, they grew up in homes without boundaries. They knew they needed that, but it felt so uncomfortable. And to them, it felt like they were putting their child through pain and something really bad. They didn't see it as healthy. They saw the tension and the anger from their kids when they set boundaries as if they were hurting them or doing something bad instead of seeing it as healthy. But once they were able to talk about that, like this dad was able to talk about how the family he grew up in and how he didn't know how to show affection and he needed to learn that, wanted to grow on it, right? That's a moment of connection between parent and child. And that's what we want, right? We want that connection because it brings understanding. And so when you start making a behavior change, when you get to the problem solving part of, okay, change needs to happen, it's coming from a place of connection, understanding, right? We're all on the same team. We all love each other. We all care about each other. And we understand what the needs are. So for that dad, very, very specific example, he learned that he needed to start a conversation with affirmation, with talking about how much he loved his daughter, how much he cared about her, how much he was in her corner, how much he believed she was beautiful, right? Beautiful to him. And then why they needed to do something really hard, why he needed to limit the money, why he needed to monitor something, why he was being hard nosed about uh, the job. And the mom, she needed to talk about her thing, how her mom was always in that role of the peacekeeper and keeping things from exploding, and how she needed to start speaking truth with love and not being afraid of having real conversations, right? And so as that family learned to draw close, guess what happened, right? It was a total shift in the way they perceived the situation, each other, supported each other, all of that. So that's what we're talking about. That's where we want to get in these situations. And um, yeah, the real change doesn't come from control. It comes from connection. I like saying that. It's a little tagline, right? But it's true, right? The real change doesn't come from control. And I see parents do that over and over and over. Something needs to change. Let's control the situation, right? Instead of connection. And there's still a place. I want to really emphasize that because I feel like so many people they tune me out as soon as I talk about don't try to control, try to connect. They're like, you're dismissing, you're not, no boundaries. Like, believe me, I work with so many families. I'm the guy who pushes boundaries with families. I'm like, no, there needs to be limits, there needs to be follow through and all that. But it's not going to work unless you're connected, right? That's the point, right? So, um, so let's talk a little bit more about boundaries. And in this specific situation, we are talking about addiction, right? We're talking about addiction uh, with this young woman. I mean, she was having the craving, she was having the desire. This was the way that she coped. And so she needed more support. And it was a good thing they were working with me because I do have experience in working with addiction and helping her with the tools. But there needed to be limits, there needed to be monitoring, there needed to be real conversations about how she was doing and getting her support. But in this particular situation, when the more she was feeling loved and cared about, the easier it was for her to make those commitments of like, okay, yes, here's what's going on. Here's where I was lying. Here's where I'm struggling, where I'm tempted. And we were able to have those kind of conversations, which is a totally different thing than someone who doesn't want to change, doesn't trust, and is resisting um, getting clean. Right? So there's that part of it as well. Okay, so either I'm in this Facebook la la land where once again it doesn't show me that anyone's there until after I'm done, and then I find out people were there. But I've got to figure this out because I don't know if anyone's making any comments that I'd be able to see it. But go ahead and try it. If you have a question about this, and also all of you watching on replay, I will be monitoring this chat. So if there is a question that you have afterwards, put it in there. I will either address it in the comments or add it to next week's. But we did have a few questions from uh, through the week, and I wanted to touch on. I don't know if I've read all these, but one of them was, how do I help my son without feeling like I'm just enabling him? Well, that's kind of the false choice, right? Um, Either we're enabling when we're helping them, or we go to that other extreme where we don't give them any help. It's really about progress, right? And who's doing the work, right? If you're coming up with the plans and you're the one who's doing it, and then when they're not putting any effort in and you are picking up the slack or you're doing a redo and all that, you're probably in that enabling zone, right? They're enabled, they're able to keep doing what they're doing. They're not putting the effort in, they're not working on it, and uh, you're you're doing all the work. So typically, what we're looking for is where is their investment, right? It's not that they get it right all the time. It's are they committing to steps and are they actually taking steps, right? And so it's kind of like this. They set a goal, and if the goal's too big, we need to make it smaller, more achievable. Like, what can you literally actually achieve today or this week in moving forward, taking care of yourself? And uh, then you are supporting them in doing that work. If they're not doing it, the goal's too big, they're too overwhelmed, they don't know how, it's something like that, and the goal needs to be redone, right? Reestablished. And um, if that's the into a smaller goal that we can then help them support them in making that change. So a lot of times it's comments like, um, like, what do you need for you to be able to do this? How can I help you? Rather than jumping in and doing it for them, whatever that thing is. All right, another question. Why does my daughter lie about her drug use even when we've told her we already know what's going on? Probably because she wants to keep using. Um, Now, maybe she wants to quit at the same time. That's very possible. But, everyone knows you say you know what's going on, but she's continuing to lie about it. No, more seriously, it's probably either shame, right? She's really struggling with it, and she's so ashamed that she can't face what's happening, can't face you and the truth about what she's doing. In that case, you need to work really on helping her feel unconditional love, and you understand it's a struggle and you're there with her. Um, or, it could be that uh, well, kind of the same thing, but she's just really struggling that much. And even if she if she's honest, she's got to stop, right? And so that's a tough spot with a lot of people in addiction. Is it's that I know I need to, but I don't want to say what's going on because then I'll actually have to, and I'm too scared to do that. So there could be a lot of things going on, but it's probably more along in those realms. All right, a few more. How do I set boundaries when every time I do, it turns into a huge argument or she threatens to leave? Um, well, sometimes you can't avoid that argument, right? But let's think about the term argument, right? And going kind of both ways. What they say is two to tango and all that. Many times I see families getting into these arguments that are unnecessary. Um, and sometimes it's because parents don't want to upset the other person, right? They want them to be okay with the boundary. And if that's your goal, then you're kind of set up for an argument because they might not be okay with it. Even if they agree with it, they might not be okay with it. They might be upset with it that it's actually happening. And so they're going to be upset. They're going to be on some level, right? It doesn't mean they're going to attack, but they're not going to be okay with it. So your goal can't be that they're going to be happy with the boundary, right? If it's it's a good boundary, then they might be upset. Let them be upset, right? It's more about the follow through. You don't have to sit there and argue and try to convince them to like the boundary. That's a irrelevant kind of asinine conversation that people have. I'm just going to keep talking till you agree with this boundary and you like it and you say that I'm okay and I'm a good parent or loved one or partner, and you get out of control there. It's more about this is the boundary, and this is what's okay, this is what's not okay, and this is what we're going to do. And if they're upset about it, give them that space. They're allowed to be upset about it. Okay. Um, a couple more. What do I do when my child says they don't care about anything anymore? Not school, not work, not even themselves. Hmm. Well, uh, that you care, right? They're telling you they don't care. They're in this hopeless place. That's usually coming out of a position of one or two or the combination of these two things. One, they um, are doing that for pity or deflecting, right? They're going to an extreme. I'm going to hurt myself. I don't care. I'm hopeless. Then it's going to kind of extreme. It's kind of like a manipulation, or they're truly in a hopeless place, right? They don't believe in themselves, and sometimes it's a little bit of both. Um, so your response needs to be more about love, right? If if you're not hopeless about them, then you're not going to agree with that. Now, I don't mean you argue with them, but if you believe in them, right, you still feel that they have a future, you still love them, you still think they have value, then that's what you go with, right? You believe in them, you care about them, and it's hard to see that they're in that place. You can empathize with them, but you don't have to agree with them, right? You just need to be there with them. I love you and I care about you. I know this is so hard, and sit with them. Many times that's where you need to sit in that emotion with them and show them that they are valuable. And then, probably not in that moment if that's what they're saying, but in a different moment when the mood is changing. Moods always change. Moods always change. When they're in a different mood, then then you can talk to them about, okay, what would feel less overwhelming, right? What are some smaller steps we can take? But you want to approach that with love and connection, kind of the theme of the night. All right, I'm doing this the last one. How can we rebuild trust after everything that has happened? I want to help, but I don't even know where to start. Rebuilding trust after everything that's happened. Yeah, so that's a very real thing. You know, Many times in the type of situations that we talk about in here, people have been taken advantage of. They've been promised to. They've been lied to. And it's hard to trust. And on the other side, someone might not believe they're trustworthy. And that's a tough place to be, but it's real, right? That trust is real. The process of building back is kind of what we've been talking about before. Rewind to what we were talking about, connecting and understanding why what happened, right? If you're going to go with the assumption, and this is a big point I'll make too, you love this person, you care about them. If they're your child, I encourage you to think about what your hopes and dreams for them were when they were just a little tyke and as they were growing up, and what you imagine the relationship would be like. And that can be painful because that's not how it's been going, but that's the core of what you believe about your kid, what you want for your kid, right? What you want for the relationship or any relationship, right? And find some of that feeling, that emotion, because that's what you're building back to. And somewhere along the way it went wrong. It went bad, right? And it's not about blame, but feelings were hurt, choices were made, things happened, but no one wanted to screw up, right? If you can at least have that principle, those foundational pieces. You love this person, you care about them. No one was trying to intentionally hurt or screw things up. It got to that place for sure, but um, you got to remember that's what you're working to build. And then it's the small steps, right? Most of the situations where people continue to get burnt, they don't have the right boundaries in place, right? They don't know how to try again without being able to stand up for themselves, protect themselves, speak up for themselves, those kind of things. So it's often a boundary issue as well, about being able to know how to move forward, but still be protected, to be safe, if that makes sense, emotionally and relationally.